Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of ESPN Power Play. The WPL is in its third season and is all happening over there. And so we have got some very special guests to bring you from there. For those, before we do that, what have you made of the tournament so far?
Not too much, I'm afraid, because I've been a little bit preoccupied with the Champions Trophy. And I guess that's maybe the first point worth making is that I don't know about the wisdom of having a tournament like this clashing with a marquee men's event where really there's competition for eyeballs. One day cricket takes all day and then some, and it doesn't really leave a lot of time for us to think about that. I've had my eye on a couple of things, which I'm sure we'll discuss. My big concern from the outset is I'm not sure that there are enough young Indian players performing well. I think there's still a big over-reliance on some of the overseas stars, which I guess is not unexpected. It happens in tournaments like these. But we have got someone with eyes much closer on the event. It's a very special day for us because we're welcoming our colleague Shruti Ravindranath. Shruti, you've been covering the tournament. It's the third season, and I guess you've kind of right there at the edge of it. What have you seen this time that's different to the last two?
First of all, it's an absolute privilege to be here with you, Val and Firdaus. This podcast is, like a path-breaking one, at least at Cricinfo, because it's a women's only podcast and women's cricket only podcast, and that is quite amazing. And you guys have been doing some awesome work here. And coming to the topic of WPL, I absolutely agree with Firdaus. And why did we have to do it in the middle of the Champions Trophy, which is making its comeback after so many years, right? And you also have this really weird scheduling where the WPL doesn't happen when India men are playing. Like, what kind of a message are you sending out there is what I'm thinking here. And about this year specifically, I feel the number of Indian uncapped players that are here are actually, it's a bit of a standout for me because I feel there is still obvious dependence on, foreign players, especially the Australians, to perform well. I think almost every team has an Australian who's been doing really well. And you also have the English players like Natsua Brunt, who's doing extremely well for her team. But that said, there are a lot more Indian domestic names coming out this time. For instance, take a Sanskriti Gupta, or take like a Nikki Prasad or Kamalini. And also we saw the other night, like there was Sri Charani who bowled really well, and looks like the RCB players, like especially I saw a chat where the likes of Danny Wyatt were like, oh, you bowled really well to her, I think after the game. So that was really nice to see. So I do think, like, while there is still dependence on the foreign players, it may take a little bit more to bridge that gap. I think we saw that in the IPL as well with the India men's cricket. And I think we need to probably wait for a few more seasons before we see Indian players completely dominating the league.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Shruti. And I guess you only have to have a quick look at the leading run scorers, the leading wicket takers, and it is dominated by those overseas players. It is dominated by Australians, in fact, the top fives. But yeah, I guess that's a really sensible way to look at it in terms of just, these young players need time. So we will keep our eyes and ears open to see who breaks through from there. That said, you managed to catch up with one of those international superstars and have a really good chat to her. Now, this is Alana King. She absolutely dominated the Ashes series immediately before the WPL. She has only played one match in the WPL, but you managed to catch up with her on all sorts of topics. Shall we take a listen to that? And and then we'll come back and have a chat.
I think you're coming here on the back of an amazing performance in the Ashes, and I think 2025 has been kind of awesome for you. Can you just describe your emotions of the past 1 month for us?
Yeah, look, the Ashes was a great series for us as a team, and no doubt, individually, I'm pretty happy and pretty proud of how I could contribute to our team success. But first and foremost, the way we played and the way we won the Ashes was something that we should all be really proud of. And I know as a whole group, we're very proud of that. And yeah, I think personal accolades come second to me, to be honest. I was just happy that I can, play a really big role for this team to win the Ashes and win it 16-0. I think it was an incredible achievement for this group and something that, maybe only post-season, in the off-season, we can really appreciate what happened, because it was into the Ashes instead of WPL. So our minds shifted quickly into WPL, but no doubt it's something that this group is very proud of.
Yeah, and do you still think about the delivery to Dunkley at the MCG?
It's hard not to be honest. I think playing a test match at the MCG was pretty iconic in itself. And yeah, as I said, like my personal accolades, they come second to team success. And yeah, that ball was something that came out of my hand really nicely, and something that, you can watch on replay and really enjoy it. I guess you don't really enjoy it in the moment. I was just happy that I got the wicket. But until I watched it a few times post game, it was something special. And hopefully I can keep replicating that and many more balls like that in my career.
And how many times have you watched it so far?
A handful of times, to be honest. I watched it a few times after the game, and I was pretty happy with it. But it's popped up a couple of times, and I know my teammates probably give me stick. They reckon I've probably watched it 100 times, but that's not the case. I can appreciate it watching it a couple of times, and yeah, it brings a big smile to my face.
Yeah, and did you receive any kind of an unexpected call or message from anyone after probably that day or after the Ashes, the test especially?
Oh, I think me as an individual and the whole team got a lot of love and a lot of support, not just after the Ashes, but throughout the Ashes. And we're all very appreciative of the support that we receive. And there was quite a few messages post the test match, and something that I'm very grateful for all the support that I get, whether it's in my little inner circle or the wider community. It's nice to have their support and do them proud as well.
Yeah, and I think you got back into the T20 ice in the Ashes, having not played the format internationally for a couple of years, but you had an excellent WBBL. Could you tell us how you worked on your T20 bowling specifically?
Nothing really from a technical point of view. I think the opportunity to be bowling in the power play for the Perth Scorchers, I think that's probably helped evolve my game. Every phase that I can in a game. I want to be a bit more versatile, and leg spin's obviously going to be a pretty hard matchup to bowl in the power play, and it's bowling a tough overs, but I want to challenge myself and get better at that. I want to be as versatile as I can for this Australian team. And, if I can experiment in the WBBL with the backing of the Scorchers, I think it's putting me in good stead, and I've enjoyed the challenge. And no doubt it's not always going to be linear. You're going to have days that you're not going to go your way, but that's cricket, that's T20 cricket, and it's especially leg spin bowling. So I think it's just having great conversations with the coaching staff in Perth as well, and especially with the Australian coaches as well. So I just want to keep evolving my game and be an option to bowl in any phase that I can for the Australian team as well. No doubt for the Perth Scorchers as well. I want to do really well for the Perth Scorchers and hopefully lift a few more titles. But yeah, I think it was just good conversations, and it's all about matchups as well. So I love the challenge. Again, happy that I could contribute, but it would be more satisfying if we could get to the finals in the WBBL. And it was nice to be back in the T20 setup for Australia, no doubt about that. And, hopefully I can get back in it on a regular basis.
And also bowling, switching between formats, right? Like you play ODIs and then T20Is and then the test. So from a technical standpoint, how difficult/different is it for you personally?
I don't look at the different formats on how you have to bowl differently. I just think you've maybe got less time to think about your plans and to react. Obviously, T20, you've got to be a bit ahead of the game. Whereas ODI cricket, you've got a bit more time to get into a rhythm, into your groove, and even Test cricket, you've got even longer. You can stick with a plan a lot longer than 1 or 2 overs. T20 cricket, you've got to be ahead of the game and try to be ahead of the batter of what they're trying to do. So I just think it's fast tracking your process of thinking, your plans, and that's pretty much how the formats I go with. And I don't really change too much. I know a good length's going to be a good length in any format, so I don't try change too much. I keep things pretty simple, but I just got to be a bit sharper with my mind and my plans. That's how I transition into different formats.
And you specifically mentioned that you've been playing training under coaches in Perth. Like, who have you been training with, and what is there any specific particular thing you've been training for, like with respect to bowling?
The head coach, Becky Grundy, I think she's been instrumental in my development over the last few years. I get to spend a lot of time with her over in Perth when I'm at home, and even Bo Casson, he's a left arm leggy, but he's instilled a lot of good things into my bowling. So those two I probably work closely with, more so with Becky, given I see her on a regular basis. Bo obviously works with the men, so it's whenever both our schedules work out that I can have a chat or a session with him. But those two are probably the biggest ones who I work with closely in Perth. And then obviously when I transition into the Australian team, it's Shelley Nitschke and Dan Marsh, who I still work really, really closely with. And they know me back to front. So it's nice to have a touch point with them, even if I'm away. And they're always there to help me. They'll get on the phone or send me some feedback, and I'm always trying to get better.
Yeah. And if any, what are the differences between bowling leg spin in India? Like, you've played quite a bit in India, I think in Pune and Mumbai as well. Like, what is the difference between bowling leg spin in India as to compare in Australia?
Well, when you're bowling T20 cricket in India, it's not a lot of fun, given the boundary sizes and the flatter wickets. But look, I love the challenge. I think it's a good place to really hone in on your skills, and you've got to be on the money from ball one, because they're quite batter friendly wickets over here, and everything's more in their favour. So it's trying to find stuff that's going to be in your favour, and trying to make sure you hit a good length. And as I said, length's always going to be key no matter what format you play in. So I'm just enjoying it, trying to work out what's going to be more effective on these wickets when they're sliding on a little bit with less turn. Obviously, we played a test match and some ODIs here not too long ago, 18 months, 2 years ago, I think, or a year ago, whatever it was. And conditions are going to change in the different formats. So it's how you can adapt as quick as you can, but not lose sight of the strength that you have. So, it's been a challenge, no doubt, but I'm always loving the challenge that it presents, and trying to get myself a better cricketer and keep evolving my game.
Yeah. And how did you master bowling at the Waka, which is actually like a graveyard for, spinners, and it's traditionally for fast bowling. So how did you master bowling at the Waka? And you were quite excellent during the WBBL.
Yeah, I think since I've moved over to Perth, I've absolutely loved bowling at the Wacker. I get more bounce than I traditionally have got over in the eastern states. So again, I go back to always saying length is always going to be key, and it's helped me develop a couple more variations to enhance that bounce. And my top spin is becoming a lot more effective when I bowl at the Wacker, and different modes of dismissals have helped me as well. So it's been really nice to get an extra bit of bounce. I'm not an overly tall person, so any extra bounce in the wicket is always going to help me. It's my home ground now, and I've absolutely loved it. And hopefully, a few more wickets at the Wacker for me, even if it's in Perth Scorchers kit or for Australia. I'll be happy to take more wickets there.
Yeah, and obviously the pitches aside, how do you think the WPL compares to the challenge of the WBBL?
Oh, that's a great question. I just think it's you're always going to be challenged against India in terms of cricket. The fandom over here is second to none. I think cricket's almost a second religion over here, and they are so fanatical, and the crowds that they get is extremely incredible, to be honest. The noise that they keep creating, and it's going to be a challenge when you're going to play RCB at Chinnaswamy Stadium. The girls have already warned me that the noise is something that you'll never probably hear unless you're playing a World Cup final against India in India. But Look, it's my first time playing in the WPL, and I've loved how fanatical they've been for every team that has played. Gujarat just played in their home state, and they got some great turnouts for there. So yeah, it's definitely RCB's turn to turn it up now, and then we get our chance to play in our home city of Lucknow, which I'm definitely looking forward to. So yeah, I think it's a atmosphere that you can't compare anything to. The crowds are great. They're noisy. They're one-eyed supporters, which is what you want, and you want them to be behind your team. But yeah, it's a great experience. I'm loving every bit of it. The noise, the chaos, everything that comes with it. It's great.
Yeah, and I think especially with the ODI World Cup coming up here later this year, I think these are possibly the venues as well for the World Cup. How important is it for you to come here and play as well? Do your homework here?
Yeah, every ground that we've played at, you learn a bit more about that, and you put that in your back pocket. And if there is World Cup games here later on, if it's in Gujarat, if it's in Bangalore or even Lucknow, you take little informations and you keep it in your back pocket for when you're going to be here and playing for your country. So yeah, no doubt. We've got a lot of Aussies here, so there'll be a lot of information collated collectively, which will be good. And, we'll put it to use when the time comes. But for now, it's just adapting to the conditions that present itself and, doing as well as we can. And for me, that's for UP Warriors right now. So, knowledge is good. And no doubt we'll bank all this for later down the track.
Yeah. I have a cheeky one for you. Actually, not so cheeky, but here at the UP Warriors, you're playing alongside Sophie Eccleston and also working under John Lewis. Coming off 16-0 and, being together with them, how has it been for you, and what kind of conversations have you been having with the two?
Soph and I are good friends off the field anyway. So we've played in the same team before for the Supernovas in the WPL Challenge a few years ago. So we're good friends off the field, so no doubt it was put aside very quickly, and even with John, my first time playing under him. But no doubt, we're on the same team now, so all the rest is history, and we're trying to do our best to be successful for the UP Warriors. So Soph and I get along really well off the field, on the field as well. We have fun, and it's just nice to play with different people, and that's what franchise cricket's all about. Different people, different coaches. You learn a lot, you create memories, and that's what it's really about.
Yeah, and with respect to having nerdy conversations about spin bowling, who's the person you go to and why?
I'm loving learning off everyone. Like obviously, Soph, you can pick her brains. She's the number one T20 bowler in the world, so I love to talk cricket with her, especially bowling plans. I even chat to the batters as well, what they're thinking as well. Deepti's got the captaincy role for the first time, and I think she's learning a lot as well. And just to have like those conversations during training and even through games, you learn off different players, and that's the beauty. We're trying to win together, and you need as much knowledge as you can, and you're trying to do it all together. And the local players have been great. Yeah, no doubt the language barrier is a bit hard at times, but slowly that they're warming up a little bit. We're teaching them a few Aussie slang, and they're teaching me a few Hindi words as well. So everyone's having fun. It's good. We've got a good vibe around us, and even our mentor Lisa Staleka, she's been great as well. Just talking to her how the last few seasons have been going, and what's worked for spinners over here, especially with not so much turn. But I think we've got a really good balance of coaching staff and players, especially internationals. And to have a few Aussies in the team, it's always good. We feel a bit at home with each other.
Yeah. And is there any special way you train to get that drift and dip you get?
No, that's just, happened over time. It's plenty of hard work. It doesn't happen overnight. It's repetitive stuff and just keeping honing on my skills. And that's what, I've done for the last, not just 15, 20 years. It's especially in the last few years when you really know how your body works and what's really ideal. So it doesn't, I wouldn't say it happens overnight and it's happened in the last 5 or 6 months. It's hours of training that you do and the skill stuff that you do and the technical stuff that all contributes to this. And it's been great, and no doubt I want to keep getting better, so I won't be stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. And how do you think you can evolve in the T20 format? Is there any variation you want to add, or is there anything you work on? Because I think that's the thing about T20s, right? You need to keep evolving and keeping up with the game. So is there anything on your mind which you think you need to do?
It yeah, I think everyone can be a bit better in every skill set that they do, right? So for me, it's just trying to be a bit more um, proactive, I guess, to different batters, especially speaking a bit more about the domestic Indian players. Obviously, you don't know a lot about them, so it's trying to get that information as quick as you can from your teammates or from the other local players in your team. And yeah, it's always going to be evolving. It's always going to be tricky. But just developing tactically and working with, some incredible internationals alongside you as well, and the staff as well. So I love learning. I love picking people's brains. That's how I learn. Just having organic conversations at training or on the bus, or at the game as well. So it's just me just having those conversations to learn a little bit more.
Are you one of those people who talks about the game even when you're not playing or during the off season as well?
It depends. Sometimes it all depends on who I'm with. I love watching cricket. Cricket will always be on, and I find I learn a lot by watching cricket. Especially listening to certain commentators, the way they commentate the game, because they're former players as well. So I wouldn't say I spend a lot of time talking to my friends about cricket in the off season. We spend a lot of time on the field and prepping for games and stuff like that. So it's nice time to switch off a little bit, enjoy your other hobbies outside of cricket. But when we're in amongst it, it's hard not to talk about cricket, because it's what we do, and I love doing it as well.
Yeah, you spoke about the commentators. Any particular commentator who you love to listen, and especially the technical aspects and stuff, all the stuff they give out?
I loved Shane Warne, even like as a player, of course, but I loved how he talked about the game. He was so good tactically, and I learned a lot from him just from commentating the games. I do have some favourites, but I just love the way they speak and how they talk about the game, like Ian Smith and Harsha Bhogle and Ian Bishop and stuff like that. And obviously the female commentators, like I can't go by, our mentor as well, Lisa Stalaker and Mel Jones, and people like that who have played the game, who I grew up watching as well. So love listening to anyone who commentates about the game, because they always have a different aspect and a different perspective on how they see the game. So yeah, it's just nice. I listen to a lot of cricket, to be honest, so I'm a bit of a cricket snuff at times, but that's how I learned the game, and developed a few more plans.
Yeah, last couple of questions actually. The delivery, you bowled to Dunkley, bowled it from the Shane Warne end, who's also one of your heroes, and you just mentioned him as well. What did it mean to you as a cricketer,
Yeah, very special. As I said, it was the first time me bowling from the Shane Warne stand end, since it's been named after him. To do it in my baggy green, and to do it in some whites as well, playing a test match, that was pretty iconic. And yeah, as I said, I hope he was, watching down, enjoying everything that I was doing and enjoying the contest, playing against England and there, as well. So yeah, it's something that I've probably reflected a little bit more on. Pretty iconic, and as I said, hopefully he's smiling down, enjoying it. And hopefully he was there in spirit as well. It was nice to do it, especially a ground that I grew up going to, watching him play was, yeah, pretty iconic.
Yeah, and so I read somewhere that your parents are from Chennai. I'm from Chennai as well.
Yeah.
Have you been to Chennai, and is any of your family come to watch you in the WPL this time?
I've been to Chennai a few times. The last time was in 2016, and all our family's now in Australia. I think Mum's got a cousin still, but lives in Kerala. Dad's got childhood friends still in Chennai, but I love going to Chennai. It's where Mum and Dad grew up, and I love going back there and learning a bit more about it. No family have come just yet, but there might be some family friends that might come to Bangalore, to watch us play. So yeah, Chennai will always be a special part of me. It's where Mum and Dad grew up and were born and raised. So yeah, I'll always have a soft spot for going back to Chennai. And hopefully there's a World Cup game later on at Chopok Stadium, because yeah, I think that will be one of Dad's dreams to go watch a World Cup game, and hopefully I'm playing in that one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alana, for talking to me.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you.
All the best for your WPL season and for the future.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
So great to hear from Alana King. And actually, I was very interested in the bit right at the end about her background from the south of India. It doesn't sound like she's been there too often, or even that she has much family left there, but it's really cool to hear about that connection that she's got there. Of course, no games being played in Chennai this time around, maybe at some point in the future, no team even based in Chennai. Susie, tell us a bit about that. I mean, we're seeing that the tournament's moved a little bit. You know, we started off with games only in Mumbai. This season, we've got games in 4 venues. Are we seeing a little bit more uptake and a little bit more interest from other cities and centers in India to maybe host some of these games?
I think they sort of did that when South Africa toured India last year. That's when I think they started branching out to different venues. Previously, it was just, Mumbai all the time. And I mean, it's good that Mumbai has 3 venues here and they can sort of go and play around. But, that was not enough, to be honest. And the way people were reacting to women's cricket, especially at Navi Mumbai over here, it was spectacular, to be honest. Like fans would swarm in, and obviously the Mumbai Indians, girl Harmanpreet Kaur got a lot of love here. But I think the other players also deserve that love. So I think when the tournament moved to Bangalore, when South Africa were touring, I think that's when you really saw, I think, again, that was one of the, the light bulb sort of a thing. Like, okay, people in Bangalore are probably one of the best, cricket audiences over here in India. But that was really amazing to see the kind of support the India women's team got. I don't want to compare here, but I think we need to, especially if it's India, that was almost on par with what the men get, the love the men get.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big statement, but I think that's what we saw, and we're continuing to see that in the WPL as well. And that is why it is really important for India women to go around and play. And I'm also thinking that there's another reason for them to do that is with the ODI World Cup coming up, and this is going to be a big one. So yeah, I think it was important for BCCI to branch out and go to the other venues as well, because keeping the ODI World Cup in mind, it is also an advantage for India women who have not played in too many venues. So that way, that's a positive thing. But at the same time, you're also exposing like the other players to the other Indian venues. For instance, when I asked Alana about it, she was like, yeah, the Aussie players are everywhere in the WPL and we are making like notes. And we're going to take all those notes and come back to Australia and discuss, and which is going to be a very, I think, important thing for them, because they have their notes of playing in different venues in India, and they already have the advantage of being Australia and going into the World Cup. I think it's just a massive advantage for them as well, and not just for them, even for the South Africans and the England players playing in the league.
Yeah, of course, we're still to find out the venues of that Women's World Cup. But you make such a good point about, especially in a World Cup year, for players, especially players like Alana King, who I'm sure will play a leading role at the World Cup, to be able to go around, to get exposure to conditions, and also, I suppose, for the fan base to get to know a little bit about her. So, well, she's already a superstar, I guess we can say, in Australia. You would have followed a lot of her career, and she was phenomenal through the Ashes. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about what you saw in is there anything different about her? Has she just sort of like progressed enormously in the last 12 months or so, or what was that experience like?
Yeah, I think as we heard in that interview, it's something that she said herself, hasn't happened overnight. It's just been a lot of hard work and just honing her craft. And she sounds like a complete sponge in terms of information and just eager to learn and pick up on any little thing she can to improve. And she's really applied herself to that. And also to just getting older and more experience. The experience she's had now is going to help her. But the fact that she's, able to use that and really draw on that has been a big marker in terms of her development. But I think one interesting thing was her T20 performances. So in the Women's Ashes, she only took 3 wickets, but she played all 3 T20s. And that was the first time she'd played the format since the 2023 World Cup in South Africa. So she had a really long layoff from T20s. Now has sort of, come back into the frame and, got herself an opportunity at the WPL. Shruti, what did you make in terms of the interview, the development in T20s, and also, the WPL? Do you see her getting many more chances as the tournament progresses there?
So here's a player who just wants to stick to her strengths. I don't think she has any variations in her bowling. She just does her thing, her leg spin, and she's, like you said, she's honed that craft for years and years and years, and she probably has something, to deliver. I mean, maybe it is a secret and something which she didn't want to reveal in the interview when I asked her. But I think with respect to T20 bowling, as you've seen over the years, like, you need to constantly be evolving. And I think that's one thing which she'll be wary of, because like she said, it's not easy being a leg spinner in T20 cricket especially. I think she'll keep that in mind, and she will look to develop more variations as she progresses to T20 as well. But having said that, I think Lucknow is going to be a bit more spin friendly, if I can say that, because UP Warriors are going to go to their home ground now, and they have about 3 games there. And last year at the IPL, I think it depended on what kind of soil they were using for every match. So there was a red soil pitch, there was a black soil, and there was a mixed one, which really didn't give advantage to the the home team in the IPL, the Lucknow Super Giants. But I think with WPL and with UP Warriors having a really good spin attack, they also have Sophie Eccleston in the ranks. So I think with a well-rounded spin attack, and they probably also get Alana King in here. So they might have a little bit of an advantage here, especially with the tournament entering a crucial stage where the top 3 is getting decided. I mean, one spot is already up. So yeah, for the rest of the teams.
And so it sounds like Alana King might actually get some game time. I mean, I remember Lucknow during the 2023 ODI World Cup, and actually, to be honest, Shruti, I just remember lots of runs being scored at that venue. I don't know if it was good for spinners, but I do think that there's something to talk about in terms of what she can offer. And you mentioned, maybe there's not a lot of dynamism and she's trying to stick to one thing, but that one thing seems to be working incredibly well. I don't know if we're allowed to say ball of the century in such confident terms anymore. Is it actually ball of the century? Because the other one, the Shane Warne one, would have been the previous century, right? So maybe it is ball of the century. But tell us a little bit about that, Velks. I mean, did you see that live, and did it really look like a ball of the century?
It was pretty impressive, and I think, it's there to be beaten if we want to split those centuries between those 2 Aussie leg spinners. But it was pretty good. I mean, it pitched on or just outside leg stump and takes the top of Sophia Dunkley's off stump. So that's the thing with her, is that she gets turn. So, and you can sort of say, a lack of variations. But then if you're able to really give that ball a rip, then that's a weapon. So still, always to be added to, but it's, it's quite something, that's, baffling the batters a little bit. So, I thought it was pretty impressive, and it was really interesting hearing you talk to her, Shruti, about how many times she's watched it back, and her teammates, laughing and making fun of her that she's watched it more than she probably has. But it must bring, a huge amount of satisfaction when that is your, you've got one job and you do it like that. I mean, that was pretty impressive.
I mean, who wouldn't, especially after bowling such a delivery? And I think especially for Alana King, bowling it from the Shane Warne stand end, I think it meant a lot to her. And so I think that's what makes it great, right? You do it in front of your what she called it, her home crowd, and against England in the Ashes. I think the stage doesn't get better. So yeah, I mean, she did what she could do, what she does the best, and I think she came out, victorious, and I think that's what matters. And the 16-0, I think that also needs to be spoken about. It was quite an embarrassment for England, but yeah, I think the fact that Alana played a big part in that, I think she's really proud of herself as well. And she keeps telling that it's more of a team effort. But I think without her performance, I don't think Australia could have made it 16-0.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she was the leading wicket taker by a long shot. So she was instrumental in that 16-0. And we'll say it one more time, 16-0. Anyhow, on to the WPL in general. Shruti, you've seen more of this tournament than any of us. And I just sort of wanted to get your thoughts, I guess, on where you see the tournament progressing from here. What have been the standouts for you? And what do you think is going to happen? Where are we going to end up at the end of it?
Actually, before getting to that, honestly, for me, I don't think any team has looked 100% convincing. I think take even Delhi, who are the first team to be in the playoffs. I think there was a massive advantage for the teams chasing. I think only 1 out of the 14 games has been won by the team batting first. I think that tells you a lot. The toss disadvantage, I guess, be it in Vadodara or Bengaluru, I think that's been the case. So I think there's been only one match where a team batting first has won, and that's been UP Warriors against Delhi Capitals. So I think Delhi have somehow gotten their tosses right in most games, especially the last 2 games, which are crucial in them getting to the playoffs. So having said that, I think, but among all teams, Delhi Capitals are looking the strongest because they've got their bases right. There are Indian players who are performing well. Shafali has been great. And they're also making quick changes. They are playing around. They're like experimenting with their teams, like moving Jess Jonathan up the order or picking their bowlers depending on the pitch, rotating their Indian domestic bowlers specifically. I think they've been doing that really well. And actually, there's a wider thing which I also want to touch upon, which is the fielding. I think even a couple of years ago, specifically the Indian fielders, I don't think they were up to mark. They were finding it very difficult to catch under lights. But I think the WPL has sort of changed that. It has had a massive say in it. And also Indian players playing a lot of T20Is in the last couple of years has also helped. But I think mainly the WPL matches, like back-to-back games and, catching under lights or be it fielding or anything, I think there's a massive improvement in that. And DC specifically have been doing that really, really well. You take a Minnu Mani or even a Nikki Prasad, who's been excellent on the field. So they look, among all the other teams, they look the most well-rounded to me. But they yet to be tested while batting first properly. So I think that's where they'd be tested the most. Yeah.
Shruti, you've spoken about things going well and obviously Delhi's form and the catching, which I think is such a good point. I think we saw, what was it, 78 dropped catches at the T20 World Cup. Maybe it was 87, maybe it was 187, I don't know, but it felt like a lot. And I want to talk about things going badly because I'm just surprised that the Gujarat Giants, for the 3rd season in a row, are just doing so badly. Bottom of the table twice in a row, still bottom of the table now. What's going wrong there, Shruti? I mean, they've got the names. What's not coming together for them?
I think... to be honest, if you don't have a strong Indian core, I think they're going to be at a massive disadvantage. And I think even in the Alana interview, she had sort of mentioned that there is a massive language barrier in the WPL, but they're somehow getting through it, through whatever means. She was saying that she was teaching the players Aussie slang and she was learning a bit of Hindi as well. So I think that's the issue. A very big issue with Gujarat Giants is that they don't look a cohesive unit. You obviously have all the big names. You have your Laura Wolfart, you have your Beth Mooney, you have your Ash Gardner as your captain, but they're not gelling together. I think they're not coming together as a team. And when you see the India internationals, they do have a Harleen Deol or a Dayalan Hemalata. But again, they've been moving up and down the order. And I think it's difficult for the team management to find them a spot because they've not been performing well also. So I think that's where the massive disadvantage comes. And in the bowling unit, you see all the names they have, almost all the names they have are uncapped players. So I think, like I said before, the WPL is here to bridge the gap, but it's going to take a few more years. And I don't think there's the over dependence on Indian uncapped players is going to help in this case.
Yeah, Sruthi, that's a really interesting point and brings me to my next question was we've got International Women's Day coming up this weekend, and since the outset of this tournament, we've talked about what it's done for women's cricket, how, it's enabled a lot of the top players to earn life-changing sums of money. And the whole idea behind it was that it would aid, development of other players as well. And as you've said, that gap between sort of the up and coming, I guess, homegrown talent, as well as the international superstars. But last episode, Firdaus raised a really interesting point about a possible gap being created between those superstars, and then you've got the development of the local talent, but also, other international players breaking in. It's only the real top echelon of the international stars that are getting a gig, and sort of how do the other players break in, the ones that are, on the international scene now, but, fighting to get those franchise opportunities. It's a big picture question, but I just wonder if, just to round off as we talk a little bit about, International Women's Day and what, this tournament has done for women's cricket, what your take is on where you see it taking the women's game forward.
Well, when you see a player like Chamari Attapattu on the bench, it says a lot, doesn't it? So I think, number one, I think even the India captain Harmanpreet Kaur spoke about it. More teams. She wants to see at least one more team, but expand. You have your fans. The fans will turn up, especially in places like Chennai. People are very eager to see cricket. They love their cricket. So just give an opportunity for a Chennai franchise is what I'm saying. And maybe a couple of other teams as well. I'm sure with the numbers growing, I think India or BCCI will see a profit there if that's what they're looking for. So I think that would really help the other players, like players from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, to thrive here. I think, but to be honest, I think I've also seen this trend in the IPL, where you see players from Bangladesh or Sri Lanka being sidelined. Not many big players get to play in the IPL. I think it's similar in the WPL as well as of now, but you never know. More teams may bring all those players also in, and you may also probably find a team for a place for Chamari Attapattu in 11. And also another important point is that I think for the under-19 women's team, like take the India under-19 women's team, which is so good, right? It creates a pathway. So it's usually like under-19 women's, and they go on to play senior domestic team, in the senior domestic team, and then they go on to play in the Indian team. But here, WPL, what it does is like it gives them a direct platform to get into the Indian side. For instance, you take a Nikki Prasad or a Kamalini, the way they carry themselves and they play and the way they play. I think you just see that standard right there, the international standard right there. And that is actually a test. I think WPL is a big test for these players to see if they are ready to go to the next level. And I think that's amazing, right? Playing in front of a big crowd or being in pressure situations, and playing with international players like, a Meg Lanning or I mean, she's not an international player anymore, but she's a legend of the game. You have Ellis Perry, you have Ash Gardner, and you're playing with Nat Silverbrandt. I think that should give you all the confidence you want. I think so. In that way, WPL is a big boon for India women's players. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Shruti, I'd be all for a franchise in Chennai. I don't know whether I'll make myself very popular or very unpopular by saying I think it's definitely my favorite venue in India. Of course, I've also got some extended family living in the south of India. So it's a very special place. It's a wonderful place to watch cricket. And we know how successful the men's franchise has been. So there's absolutely no reason why you can't have a women's one. And just to add to your point, not just an expansion in the WPL, but one thing we'd love to see over here in South Africa, a women's SA20. We'd love to see a women's version of the PSL starting in Pakistan, even if it goes head-to-head with the WPL window like the men's PSL is about to do. Why not, just get some competition into the system? Because, as you say, we can't have Chamari Atapattu, and I want to throw some other names in there. Nigar Sultana Jyoti, Bangladesh's amazing captain, who I think absolutely should be getting more gigs. We can't have players like that sitting on the bench. But for now, your point around the under-19 women, and especially Nikki Prasad, I know you've got your eye on her. Shruti, enjoy the rest of the WPL. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Play. We look forward to having you again at some stage, and a happy International Women's Day to you and everybody in India. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend and the next couple of weeks of cricket action.
Now, speaking of International Women's Day, another colleague of ours, Ashish Pant, managed to catch up with Beth Mooney whilst at the WPL as well. Now, she's another superstar of that Ashes series. She was the leading run scorer by quite some way, scoring nearly twice as many runs as the next best player, who was Heather Knight from England. So she absolutely dominated that series with the bat, whilst Alana King dominated with the ball. She had a little thing or two to say about International Women's Day, among other things in the tournament. Let's take a listen to that interview.
Just wanted to sort of delve into the whole women's game that is on and the change that has happened. According to you, you've been around for more than a decade playing international cricket around in the women's circuit. How is cricket changing women's lives more so now with the contracts coming in?
Yeah, I think obviously financially it's a lot more lucrative than it was, but I think the biggest thing from my point of view is the opportunities out there are a lot more than they were when I was growing up. You don't only have to look as far as, the WPL starting its third edition this summer, the 100 going into its fifth season this year, and the WBBL just finishing its 10th season. So I think if you just look at those three main tournaments around the world, you've got the CPL, the PSL, they're sort of kicking off as well in the women's circuit. I think, you can really make a career out of playing cricket around the world as a female now. I think for a long time that was just offered to the men and probably the male players that weren't quite making it in their international side. So I think it's providing a great platform for not only the big international players to play in these tournaments, but certainly lots of very good domestic players around the world as well. You look at Shikha Pandey, for example, hasn't quite been able to crack back into that Indian team, but had a great season playing for Brisbane Heat in the WBBL. So, that's just one example of many out there that mean that girls around the world can do this for a living.
You've been in the midst of the changing landscape of women's cricket in a way, from getting no crowd at all and almost no recognition. You're now playing in front of 30,000 people. How do you describe that big change, and have you gotten used to playing in front of these crowds?
Yeah, certainly a different experience, going from playing in front of 100 people that were family and friends to, 30, 50, 60,000. Obviously International Women's Day is coming up and that'll mark 5 years since the T20 World Cup final in Australia, where we played in front of 6,000 at the MCG. So never in my lifetime did I think that would happen. It's happened a lot sooner and probably hasn't happened as often as we would have liked, especially in Australia. But I certainly think over here in India, we get a lot of decent crowds. We're at Chinnaswamy Stadium at the moment, and the RCB fans are loud as hell. So, it's just been really nice to see the change in I guess, perspective of where the women's game's at and people wanting to watch and do anything they can to get a ticket?
Since the last, I think, 5-6 years, since that 2017 ODI World Cup, the entire narrative was, where's the WPL? Where's the WPL? WBBL has been so successful, so has the 100 now. Just coming to the WPL, what's the kind of, how's it been for you? Just experience at the WPL.
Well, I think it's been an amazing experience. One of the things that I love the most about it is interacting with the local players who have craved this opportunity for such a long time. You mentioned that 2017 World Cup final at Lords that India played in. That probably showed a lot of young girls in India that they could mix it with some of the best on the global stage. And you know, it probably took a little bit longer than people were hoping for the WPL to kick off, but you know, I'm sure there's plenty of Indian players and young Indian girls out there who are super proud that we got there in the end, and the product's been amazing. I think the standard of cricket's been really high. Obviously, the crowds have been getting really involved with the games and the competition, and yeah, I think just interacting with the local players, you know, the staff that we get, they want to make sure we're looked after really well, and the coaching staff as well. So very lucky to be a part of it. Hopefully, you know, I've still got a few years left in me in this league, but certainly better for the experience for sure.
Well, great to hear from Beth Mooney, and also to hear how many women are thinking about the importance of a day like International Women's Day, thinking about what it means to be a female athlete who can now earn a living off cricket, but also, I guess, in Beth Mooney's case, to really serve as a bit of inspiration and to help with developing and bringing through some of the younger players. So, Phelps, we spoke about this with Shruti a little bit earlier, and maybe a slight concern around the fact that the foreign players, the big superstars, the experienced players are dominating a competition like the WPL. Perhaps not unusual. We definitely saw the same thing happen with the men's IPL almost, 17, 18 years ago now. But what do you think can be done to bridge that gap? And is there enough happening, or do we just need more patience?
Oh, I guess there's a combination of things. I think Shruti made a really interesting point about expanding the number of teams. I think that's got to be on the cards pretty soon. It sounds like that's really gaining momentum, the calls for that. And I guess, you know, once you get another team in, you've got a whole nother, you know, group of superstars that can come in there who maybe aren't getting regular gigs, but then you've got another little core of homegrown talent that can get a chance, and then it's just who fills in that middle part. And I mean, again, if it's only one more team coming in, that's just going to be a tiny handful of opportunities, but it's a start. And then maybe, I guess, if it expands to more teams beyond that, you get that sort of effect replicated. Again, that's going to take time. So I guess that comes back to that other point that she made and that you've made just there, in terms of patience. If we think about this tournament's only in its third year, and you know, the progress that it's made in terms of, you know, being such a showcase event and providing all these opportunities and all this entertainment and building that fan base, which was already there, but it's really you know, there's been no doubt there, as Shruti was explaining, the fans will come, they're there, they've got you know, their teams, and they're there cheering for them. So that should not deter organisers from, you know, introducing more teams, making it even bigger and better. So I guess there's that. And then it always, I guess, comes back to what I always mention when we talk about this topic, and that's, as these franchises expand, then what happens with bilateral cricket, and that being an opportunity for those up and coming players in each of their countries. Because at the moment, when you've only got a tiny number of opportunities relatively in franchise, that's where they get their opportunity to break through. And, you know, it's going to be that whole sort of club versus country, how they manage that. I think they're trying with making those specific windows for franchise and that sort of thing in terms of protecting bilaterals. But it's a bit of a let's wait and see what the future holds. Any last minute outtakes from you for as we look ahead to International Women's Day, or the rest of the cricket that's coming our way?
Yeah, one thing that really concerned me was Shruti saying that she thinks that the Australians are going to have the advantage of familiarity with conditions ahead of the World Cup, because there's so many of them playing in the WPL And I guess they're actually getting regular game time. I mean, I know we said Alana King had only had one game, but I think about like a Chloe Tryon or Nadine de Klerk or some of the South Africans who are sitting on the bench. And I'm wondering if they are going to be getting any inside info. It's an important point because conditions in India so different to conditions certainly that are used here in South Africa for the women's games. And I make that point because the women don't play at the big venues. You know, Australia and England played at the MCG. The South African women's team have never played a game at the Wanderers, for example. So we're really wanting to see that kind of thing change and for the higher profile venues to be getting these games. Until that happens, I'm not sure, you know, how much they're going to know and learn about different conditions. They tend to play in the same places here: Bloemfontein, East London, Benoni, Kimberley, the so-called smaller venues. And generally, there's not a lot of life in those pitches and there's not too much happening. So I'm a little bit worried that Australia, who are already a very strong team, are going to be made even stronger ahead of the World Cup. And I don't really think we want that. We want to see at least some level of competition. Of course, big pressure on India, I imagine, to win a home World Cup. But then just on the flip side of that, we know that coming up very soon will be the World Cup qualifiers, and they'll be played in Pakistan. We've got West Indies who'll be playing there. Someone like a Hayley Matthews is getting some experience in the WPL now. And a really tough tournament, I think, awaits us there. I almost feel like Pakistan, who are the home side of the qualifiers, could be pretty touch and go, right? You've got a strong Bangladesh, a strong West Indies, and maybe Pakistan miss out on the World Cup, which should be very unfortunate. It would simplify the logistics, of course, but yeah, it would be terrible to see them miss out. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as we approach a milestone day for women, is that opportunities are still not very equal and not as equal as we would like them to be. And I hope we're not in a situation where the stronger teams, like the Australians, like the ones who've been winning the WPL, are just getting stronger and everyone else is just, you know, struggling to keep up. What about you? Anything you're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks before we build up to those qualifiers?
Well, I think that's just it. We've already got our eye on that World Cup way down the track later this year, and there's qualifiers to come. I mean, that's going to be the next big thing. Who makes the tournament from there? And as you say, there's some really it's going to be a keenly fought competition for those last two places. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Also, I mean, in between times, the finish to the WPL, as Shruti said, you know, in terms of a side standing out and that sort of thing, we've got Delhi Capitals at the top, but then we've got Mumbai Indians below them. They've got 2 games in hand still, as I think have UP Warriors. So there's a lot to still be played out, you know, below that number 1 spot. So yeah, I think that could be really interesting as we approach the pointy end of that tournament. In the meantime, wishing all our listeners a very happy International Women's Day, and we'll bring you all the action from all the stuff we've talked about in our next episode. Until then, thanks for listening to ESPN Cricinfo Power Play.